Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by Lee Keegan and Diarmuid Murtagh to preview this Sunday's All-Ireland football final. Suppose to start off with the lads, how are you keeping?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks.
Good, yeah. Can't complain now, Darragh.
Diarmuid, might start with yourself just briefly on Roscommon's year. Ended up in a quarter final in the end. It was probably a mixed year. I'm sure you probably heard it enough maybe over the last few weeks since. Probably disappointing league. Obviously, anytime you go down, it'll be disappointing. But to turn it around and at least get to a quarter final, mixed emotions maybe.
Yeah, it's a funny one because if you told us at the start of the year we get to a quarter final and take from there, we would have been delighted. Especially considering a few lads that maybe didn't come back in this year, and then we had a lot of younger lads in who are kind of nearly in their debut season, you could say, or have been around the panel and maybe making the breakthrough this year. Yeah, the league was disappointing. We were probably hurt a bit maybe by the lads, the Bridget's lads doing so well. Because like there was 5 or 6 of them nearly, or 4 or 5 of them starting nearly by the end of the championship. So, to hit the ground running in the league has always been important for any team. When you're down a lot of lads and maybe trying to integrate a lot of lads into it, you're going to struggle early days. But yeah, when you're losing games, there's always a kind of feel, say, from outside the camp that things aren't going well. So that was probably the thing that we struggled with. And look, when you're training away, you never want to be losing games. Like, we were going out to win all those games. So it didn't look good, but like, as I said, we would have taken a quarter final against Armagh at the start of the year if you told us, and that was our aim. Because we haven't been there for about 7 years. I think it was under Kevin McStay in 2017 when we drew with Mayo actually and got well beaten in the replay. Then that was the last time we were in a quarter final, and so for us that was progress. But when you're losing games, it is very annoying because you don't want to be losing. You want to be winning. You want to be, even if we'd won 3 league games, the outlook of the year looks a lot even more positive. But the fact we've maybe, say, beaten Cavan, beaten Tyrone, and then we're knocked out, when you look back in the year, people will just say, well, you beat Monaghan, Cavan and Tyrone in the many games. So I can understand why there would be a negative outlook, but to get to a quarter final and really believe that it could have been different if we maybe didn't lose Ultan Harney and David Murray, and then obviously Rory Fallon to the red card. I really feel like that could have been an interesting second half. So not a million miles away, but probably frustrating not to win games early on in the year. But in fairness to Davy Burke, like, we were aware things weren't going well during the season, so he was really big on making sure we were learning from all those games, that we could put them into practice in the championship. And so basically on a Tuesday night, that we were seeing things in the video that we're trying to work on that was going to make us a better team for the championship. That was one of the main focuses for us, even when we were losing games. So that kept the positivity very high. And we always knew, especially the experienced lads, that we wanted to perform in the championship. And in some games we did, in some games we didn't. But we have to remember, like, I suppose our first 3 championship games were Mayo, Dublin, Mayo, who teams we could easily be seeing on Sunday on TV or at the game playing the All-Ireland final. So it wasn't the easiest task for us, and we know how hard them teams are working to beat us. So, like, in those games, small little things can define games.
Yeah, how do you look back on just the Armagh game specifically? From being at the game and maybe afterwards, it feels like there was an opportunity there. Maybe Armagh weren't just at their best either. Maybe just the shooting boots or something. Now, I have to say, the weather, you could tell maybe from 10 seconds in, I think 3 players slipped straight away. It seemed like a bit of an ice rink out there. But how do you reflect on that game specifically?
Yeah, it's one of those I'm still trying to reflect on it, to be honest. I'm dreading the end of season review on that game, especially for us as forwards. We left the shooting boots up in Tyrone, I think. But no, it's one of those games where I think you always feel, there was something there for us. Like, there's no guarantee we would have went on to beat Kerry and get to an All-Ireland final. I think actually it could have been Donegal. We could have been playing either, I think, or Galway anyway. So it was an open draw, but every game is different. But within that game, there was a feeling that we could have won that game. Now, it mightn't have shown But at half time, I suppose, I know like a lot of the shots were erratic, but for a lot of our games this year, a lot of those shots were going over, even if we were losing the games. So it was one of those that I'd back lads to keep taking on those shots. And maybe, I suppose, the weather didn't help the ball. When the ball is wet, it doesn't travel half as far either. So maybe it was kind of maybe poor decision making and composure on our behalf. But like just feel like it was there for us, and I suppose we always knew there was maybe a monkey on the back for Armagh as well about getting over that quarter final. That if we could have been in that game with 15 minutes to go, there would have been no pressure on us. And you can even see in the second half, I'd say there, like you can nearly hear the Armagh management going mental on the sideline. They probably tell you themselves they made a lot of mistakes in that second half, and we were down 14 men. But I suppose when you're say at 14 men and we were trying to push on kickouts because we had to go for the game when you're losing, then you're conscious of conceding goals. And it was very difficult, and it saps the energy out of you then if you're dropping off kickouts and getting back, and then they're getting an easy score, and then it's hard to work back up the field to get the scores against a team who is an extra man against you, because they can afford to nearly gamble that we won't score in an attack, and then they have a fella or a few lads that are fresh that haven't got back. But just kind of the original feel is that, and no disrespect to Armagh, that we felt like it was a game that we could have maybe been a lot closer coming down the line if things, maybe we had a small bit more luck with, say, the injuries especially. And if Rory is still in the field, like he's a young lad, but he's a great leader as well in their defence. He had a great year for Bridget. So there's just a few little things there that maybe didn't go our way. And look, that can be our fault as well. It's not blaming anything else. So, but it was definitely a game that we felt like we could have been thereabouts, and would have really liked if we'd 15 men on the field. It was a point either way with 15 to go. That'd be something we would have been licking our lips at before the game. But yeah, you point out there about Croke Park. I don't know if you noticed this, Lee, but it's probably one of the hardest pitches to play on when it's wet. It's like the ball is like soap, and it's so slippy. It's hard to turn, studs or no studs. It's funny, it's the best surface in the country, but it's difficult to play on. And if you go into contact at all with the ball, it's gone. Like you could think you have it, and it just slips up. It's a funny one. I take the hide on a wet day and a windy day.
We played the All Ireland in 16, the first game, and it bucketed out of heaven. And most of us had wore Molies, and I think I was on my arse in the first 3 times the first 20 minutes. So of course we drew the game. So Conchi then always changed our routes and studs for the replay. Sure, the sun was beaming out of heaven.
And then if you have the studs on, then at half time you nearly have to change them to Molies because your feet would be blistering up. But it's probably the best footwear to wear.
Paddy Durkin was burst at the seam. No, but it's a really valid point. Like Croke Park is amazing in terms of the pitch, but on a really greasy day, I think the ball nearly goes tenfold faster because you don't see it as quick, or it's gone before you even blink. So it's I always find there's so much, even a bit of drizzle or something, it does add something big time. Yeah, like your game, you have to adjust it a bit quicker than what you would have thought on a dry day. So
it actually, in fairness, it helps the underdog though. If you're a team, like I suppose we were underdogs going in against you in 2017. And it probably helped us in that regard, that we knew that you're a really strong running team, and that you nearly steamroll teams as in run over them. So we kind of knew that you mightn't take the ball into contact as much, or if you did, you have a better opportunity of overturning a team. And so I think it does suit the underdog when the conditions are like that. So that's why maybe we were underdogs again. That would have been another thing we had maybe going for us going into that Armagh game as underdogs, but. Yeah, no, overall it was a disappointing end, but it's very difficult in football nowadays if you go down to 14 men to beat a team, just the way the game is played.
And briefly, Lee, Mayo's year, I'm sure it's been debriefed down enough since the Derry penalty shootout. It seems like a lifetime ago, even though it wasn't. How is it being reflected upon? Because you could look at it and say, well, Galway are in the All-Ireland final. Mayo were 2 points up in that kind of final in injury time, and it was nearly looked at that Mayo threw that away. So is there a sense that Mayo maybe aren't as far away as people thought originally to maybe competing in All-Ireland again?
I think it seemed like a very disappointing way to end losing on penalties on the back of a really positive performance week 4 against Dublin. But that was where the problem lies, probably in terms of Mayo's ear. And I think Kevin McSay probably summed it up pretty well in his post-match summary, is that the 3 big games we were in this year, in terms of we had a Connacht final, Dublin, and then Derry knockout, we were leading all the into time and we let them slip. So that kind of badgers a little bit with Mayo, and I'm sure it's very disappointing from the team knowing that in those games, and invariably look at Galway, as you said, now they're in the All-Ireland final as a result. So we're probably not a million miles away, but it doesn't feel like that after the year and where we went out in the playing quarterfinal. And as well there, I suppose, if you take the context, like I finished up in 22, we've been in quarterfinal, and we did make a quarterfinal, where the previous decade we've been quite spoiled in terms of it was quarter semi-finals. So I think expectations definitely probably lowered a little bit, and as well I think it's very unfair sometimes. Maybe you experience this too, but I think sometimes there's always comparables between older groups and different groups, and I think at Mayo we're still comparing to the group that was up there competing all the time, where now this is a total different group, different management, different style of football. And I think sometimes it's not like for like. They don't play in the same swashbuckling, chaotic madness. They're trying to play the game that they feel is best for them to compete. And at the moment, it wasn't good enough, and that's the reality, because we were not going to play in quarterfinal. But in saying that, and Jeremy, you summed up pretty well, teams aren't a million miles away. I don't think, and this is no disrespect to football in general, I don't think the quality or standard is as high as it used to be, but I also do think there's golden opportunities for teams to compete now and really believe that there is an All-Ireland there. And look at the 2 teams in the final this weekend. It's a golden opportunity. Don't think we're going to see the dominance that we've seen over the years. So I'm trying to say is I think Mayo will probably reflect, as bad as it was, and think, do you know what, we're not a million miles away, but they need to bridge that gap in terms of what's their best game plan to progress and move forward to get to that level.
Yeah, I think that's a good point they make there about comparing to the previous teams, especially like your team of say maybe 13 to say up to where you finish yourself, or maybe even 18, 19, that kind of time. Like I don't think, say, outside yourselves, Dublin and Kerry, there wasn't a chance of the 8th team in the country of maybe surprising you. I don't think that, as much as like when you look back on it now, as much as you want to believe if we were playing you in the Connacht Championship, we're obviously preparing to beat you and fully believe that every time. But when you actually look back on it now, I don't think there's any teams as close. And the way each 3 teams played that time, it was a good beating your given team. There wasn't as in teams were hanging on for a while. It was steamroll stuff. So, I think it's very hard to compare teams because every player is different. The personality is different.
Yeah.
Even from, say, the players I would have played with, like say the way Cathal Craig plays the game now is very different to the way Ben O'Carroll plays the game.
Yeah.
So like you have to adapt, and I think managers are trying to adapt, and I think Mayo are trying to adapt. I think Mayo are probably, they're afraid to play the way you used to play because they're afraid of being maybe left vulnerable or like maybe being picked off by teams. And I can actually understand why they do that. And you can actually see, I noticed last year when they were playing Cork, it was very obvious that they were coming up against a defensive system and that they had worked on, say, getting width and depth and trying to break down. And it was kind of like slow attacks, and it was funny even watching. I was like, you don't really see that with Mayo. It's usually real fast, kind of taking the game by the scruff of the neck kind of stuff. But I can actually understand why, just from even being around, say, Roscommon from say 2014 to now, how much it has changed, and the detail that's gone into, like, it's nearly like gone into set plays as such. It's mad. So I can see why, and I think it's a good point that you can't compare. Because it's probably unfair, I suppose.
It's unfair, but also I think we got such a bit of optimism from the Dublin performance in some regards, and then when we reflect that, I think the reaction probably spoke a lot about that game in terms of, like, I don't want to be on Mayo because I know it's Armagh always again, but the point is, like, we got really excited because we had a really good performance of a high level, and that slipped, and then we thought maybe this style is going to come back in, and then they went back to plotting and all that kind of stuff. So it's just trying to get a balance, but you're never going to please anybody. It's always up for debate. So
it's nearly more so about the team who you're playing as well. I think that's it kind of like Mayo and you probably playing Derry, that what Derry are going to do and what they're good at. And sometimes as teams, you probably worry too much about the opposition. That can be a factor as well. Because like that game, like I actually think Mayo played well this year. I think they've had a good year, say, playing well and trying to get back to maybe the way that you would have played back in your time, Lee. But I think they've actually had a decent year. Like they should have beaten Dublin that day, and I would say, like, out of all the teams we played this year, like the most difficult games have been Mayo and Dublin. I know we've lost to them, but just with how they play, so like I think they should have lots of optimism, after the year this year. But it's just, I suppose it's a results driven business, and when you're not even in the last 8, people don't even care about you. They don't. You may as well have packed it in after the league. That's
as you said, it's summed up as a disappointing year. And that's what people will say, irrespective of trying to justify performances, or it's disappointing here. And just from the Mayo public even speaking, if you only make a quarter final, they're basing that on very unsuccessful a year in general. So Kevin will be aware of that, and listen, like yourselves, there'll be tweaks here, there'll be people in and out, and trying to adapt to what's going to come at the end of the track next year. So
that's it.
The two teams in the final, so Sunday, we may as well start with the Connacht neighbours, Galway. How much would that final 2 years ago against Kerry in 22 will stand to them, just in terms of the build up, the couple of weeks? Like Lee, you would have been in that position loads of time, even people on about tickets. I don't know how much you would have been plagued by people you wouldn't even have heard of, trying to let on they know you for a ticket maybe in the lead up. So how much of does that experience count going into Sunday?
I think it's I think it's really valuable to have, to be honest. I think Galway, even chatting to I was at a Galway event last night, and even to hear them that was all dusted within a couple of days, and it's important because it has to be done. It's part of what's there. It has to be all those boxes ticked, because last thing is you want something festering and then next minute the player is getting a phone call or a text or whatever. So just listen to the goal last night. It all seemed pretty smooth. They're pretty happy where the players are at. So it's small things like that you don't need to be worried about, because at the end of the day, it's about the players getting themselves right for a big match. So I think the experience of 2 years ago and the build up, but even to get that exposure to playing at the biggest occasion of the year, I think Galway will have learned so much from that. And to be fair, it's not like this Galway team isn't exactly the same Galway team 2 years ago in terms of personnel days, but in terms of how they play, they're a lot different. And I think for Galway as well, like it's funny. Like I just chatted to Darragh before he came on, Jeremy. I felt Galway, we wouldn't have seen them as a huge rival for years. That's not being disrespectful, because we give them quite a good hammer for my first 5 years.
More than ourselves.
Well, yeah, but that's just where, like,
I know.
But then things change, and like it's funny, people will say, like, Galway underachieved, but eventually Galway are going to come good. Like, for a population and the quality that they have within the county, it's not a fluke that they're here. And they're building on huge success under 20s. They had the All-Ireland success 2 years ago. Look at that cohort, that team that's in this team now. So I think there's a hunger and a desire based on 2 years ago that they didn't get that job finished, because if you're really looking down to the nuts and bolts of 2 years ago, a big decision may have cost them. I'm not saying it did cost them, but it definitely changed the complexion of that game later on. And the Galway will probably feel or regret that they didn't get over the line that game against a Kerry team that didn't play particularly well that day. So I think there's a lot of unfinished business here for Porrick and the team. So I feel they're going to be in a really good position. And as well, I not to go on, but I think the 2 week break is massive for players. I know it's a short window, but I found with all Ireland, the 4 week break is it could feel like 4 months, to be honest, because there's so much chatter, there's so much expectation, there's so much preempts what could happen, trying to play every eventuality in your head, where these guys have literally gone at the back of semi-final games, got straight back in training Tuesday, and they're already focused because the All-Ireland's 10 days away from the time they played, got back together, after the semi-final. So very little time to digest what happened. It's very much move on to 2 weeks time, and that's a really nice position for players to be in, because it's upon you before you know it. So it's exciting times for Galway, I think, at the weekend. I really do think so.
Yeah,
go on.
It's interesting, like just the way that the year has gone for Galway. It's nearly like it's written in the stars for them, the way, you know, like winning that kind of final, beating Dublin, maybe getting that draw, beating Dublin, and getting into the semi-final, beating Donegal, who a lot of teams have tipped. It's a dangerous place to be too after all those big wins. But I think Galway win this game because they're the best defensive team and they're the best team at breaking down a mass defense. I think like their ability from their half back line is very strong. I just noticed this from maybe playing them last year in the Connacht semi-final after we beat Mayo. We played them in the Hyde, and I was just so impressed by like they're very. I've heard someone else say this, so I think could have been actually Davy Burke in an interview. Their football IQ is very, very good. They're very smart footballers, and a lot of their smarter footballers are actually in their back six. You know, like say your John Daly, even though he hasn't featured in the last few games, which is I find mad. I think he's one of the smartest players in the country, on the ball and off the ball, organising everything. Dylan McHugh, like you see Johnny McGrath and Jack McGlynn coming up the pitch all the time, always doing the right thing. Like what Armagh kind of are basing a lot of their scores off is maybe turning the team over on 45 and breaking at pace. When a team works up the field, Galway don't give you that chance to turn them over, and they're very good at that. They'll get a high percentage shot away, and then they obviously have a star-studded forward line that can do damage to any team. So for me, that's what gives Galway the advantage over Armagh. So if I was to tip a team for the weekend, I'd be tipping Galway. The only thing is, I would say it's a final. Obviously, I've never been there, don't know what it's like. Can imagine on the day it's madness with all the big crowd. It's even when you're there watching as a neutral, it's exciting and it's anything can happen. So I would probably I'd be tipping Galway in 9 times out of 10 if they were playing each other in any sort of game. But in the final, you'd have to give Armagh a good chance in that once-off game. But I think, and that's no disrespect to Armagh, I think they're very good and they've improved an awful lot. I think Galway are very well equipped and very well organised, very well coached, and always going to be difficult to beat. And if Galway get ahead of you early, then they can kind of maybe leave Walsh and Comer up the field, and they're going to do damage then on the break with their pace and strength, and Finnerty obviously putting the final touches. So it's a really interesting one. It's hard because the one thing, and I would have noticed this actually, say at that time in 2016, 2018, maybe when I think they beat you in 16 and 18, because they beat us in the Connacht finals then after that. And,
we couldn't beat them for 5 years.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, but what I found was one thing they really got good at under Kevin Walsh that time was their long kickouts and underneath the breaks. And I think that's something they've actually continued to get better at. And I think that's where, like, they nearly see that as a platform. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting battle. Do Armagh drop off the kickouts and let go of the work up the field? But as I was saying, they're smart footballers. They won't give Armagh that energy that they'll want. Or will Armagh push on the kickouts and take that risk with like Conroy, John Maher, Matthew Tierney? Like this half forward line in midfield for Galway are probably all about 6'4". You know, like they're big men, and then you have Comer coming out as well, who's an animal. Like so, it's a very interesting one. What Armagh do, I think they're in a bit of a pickle with what way they should set up. The one thing I would say is bringing in Niall Grimley has given them a lots of scope in the air as well. I think he's deceivingly excellent in the air. So it'd been interesting to see how it pans out. Will it be cagey at the start? Will Armagh just have a cut at it? Will Galway have a cut at it? It'll be really, really interesting now. Should be a good final, hopefully.
Yeah, Lee. Galway seemed to, I think they gave up every kick out against Donegal. Now, whether that's to do with maybe the fitness of Shane Walsh, Damien Core, maybe, I know it's hard to go the whole time. And I even heard during the week say if Armagh drop off Galway's kickouts, will Gleeson still decide? He does seem to like to go long. Would he still decide he's going long and maybe push the Galway defenders up just to maybe mix it up a bit, surprise Armagh, not just take the handy short one. Will he still go along?
Yeah, well, Gleeson was one of the guys we looked at what type of pressure he'd be under in the semi against Donegal. And fair to him, I think the first half particularly, he found Matthew Turney under the Hogan stand about 3 or 4 times in acres of space. So I think Gleeson, he probably got a good baptism of fire in the Armagh group game where they could see their only goal off a poor kick out, and it was well intercepted, well finished, but that for him probably signaled he probably is more safer goal long, and as Jerome said, like it's a land of big men out there, so goal will get a lot of joy goal long, if I'm totally honest. So I do think Armagh are going to attack Gleeson in some way at certain stages. I don't think they'll do it for a full game. I don't think any team does that anymore, puts a high press. It's not a thing anymore. If you even looked at a goal against Galway, they pressed them first half, and then the second half they never even pushed for a kick out. So that's the kind of dynamic. I do think the midfield battle will be huge, but I do think Armagh will feel there's something in Gleeson where I think he's been brilliant so far. He's answered all his critics in terms of, that one mistake probably was what people are living on a little bit, where he's really made up for it in terms of his kick out, commanded high ball, doing the simple things really well. So, but Armagh will feel there's something there for them to go at. From Galway, I think, like, it's funny, even Armagh, like, sometimes I get caught as well a little bit of Galway. Armagh are quite big men as well, like Grimley, Ben McCreely's massive.
Yeah, he's huge.
Rian O'Neill is a great fetch of the ball, and yourself, you played against them. They're big boys as well.
Yeah.
So they look to vary that up as well, like press in, but also their own kick out. I don't foresee Galway probably pushing too high too often. They're, as Jerome said, they're very comfortable letting teams come at them because they're so defensively sound. Where Armagh, even I was watching the Roscommon game a bit last day. It's funny when they got turnovers in Egypt, they actually have everyone back in their half. And when they looked up, even Turbo said there were actually no out ball. Where when Galway did against Donegal, they actually had kind of Finnerty, Welsh, and a Comer in a little line or a triangle. So they always had that kind of focal point. Now, Armagh did it well against Kerry. I thought they tweaked their attack a little better against Kerry. The one thing for Armagh, I feel they rely on Galway making the mistakes, because if you look at the history of their games, it's come down to a mistake here or there, particularly in the last 2 or 3 games, not the quarterfinal 3 years ago, where that was just bedlam, but take the group game that was based on a mistake where Galway were completely dominating that game up to 57 minutes, and then the goal came, so that's a momentum killer. But even the Kerry game 2 weeks ago, it was based on Kerry missing those 2 opportunities. And next minute, Armagh crowd fed off that. And you could see Armagh just completely, the momentum shifted with them. And from that point on, it really only felt like there was ever going to be one winner. So it's funny, like I shot David Fitz last night with this. Are Armagh happy to be 4 points down with 50 minutes to go? Probably they're not going to say that, because they're a great team with chasing. I'm not saying they're going to, but versus, remember, they're 4 points up in those final and they just closed up. So it's a funny dynamic for Armagh, like, because I always think they're a brilliant team with chasing the game and getting into it. We're been in the position of being up by X amount of points. I think to find out a bit hard sometimes. Now, listen, I'm sure if they tell you if they're 4 points up with 50 minutes going on our final, they'll be absolutely delighted. I'm not saying that, but it'll be just interesting, their whole psychology, how they handle that pressure. So I think it's a really fascinating final. I'm so torn between matchups, setups. Does a team take a risk? I do think Armagh have to risk something at the weekend. I really do. I think they have to go for it in some regard. Whether that's in the first half, probably not. I think a lot of the good stuff is going to happen second half. I think the 2 teams will kind of feed off each other in the first half, try to mirror each other. Don't think we'll get a spectacle in the first half. I hope I'm totally wrong saying that, but I think second half, when it's in the middle spot, someone is going to have to take a risk. And I think someone like a Rian O'Neill for Armagh, and he did it in the semi-final when they really need him to come up with a 4-year bomb, or Stephen Campbell coming off the bench making a huge impact. Something like that is going to go. And finals are all based around the Rian O'Neills, the Shane Welshes, the star quality players. It could be a player who has just completely run under the radar on Sunday, who decides to have the game of his life, and he will not be spoken about in any of the conversations the lead up. So that's what all our final days are about. It's talking about the star quality, but it's the underdog kind of guy that comes in and comes up with a 10 out of 10 performance, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again on Sunday.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Darren. No, go on.
Well, no, I was going to refer to I think it's Lee mentioned there, Soupy Campbell. Like, the Armagh bench has been a a big thing for them. And Peter Canavan said it before the semi-final, and I was kind of raised eyebrows that Armagh had the best squad. Maybe not first 15, but when you look at the squad, the Duffy, Oisin O'Neill, Soupy Campbell, Aidan Nugent, Jarly Oakes there, like that, serious options to come off the bench. And Soupy Campbell's coming off. He came on against Roscommon. I think he got 2 points in the second half.
Yeah.
Last day, 2 points. When you have a fella there that you're nearly banking on getting 2 points, and maybe you might get another point or two from the rest, it's a serious tool to have.
Darren, just on that, it's funny because Jeremy, you explain better, but when you're a sub that comes on, you try to impact the game. What Armagh do really smart with Stefan is they actually just give him the ball straight away. They want him to do something. Like I always find when subs come on, they're trying to integrate into the game, and with Stefan, it's like when someone gets the ball, they nearly look for him to give it to him and here, do something. Yeah. So he's really confident doing that then as a result because they know his abilities. So sorry,
I actually think a savage management move from Armagh against us was bringing him on at half time, because we were down to 14 men and they needed someone. They were probably worried about maybe falling back into going into a cagey way of playing for the second half and maybe keeping us in the game for as long as possible. But they brought on him at halftime to take the game to us. I thought that was a really smart move because he was an extra player you had to worry about when they were attacking. And he's really good at breaking the line. And he's another one more than John Daly. Like, I'm wondering how he's not getting maybe the nod. But I suppose they're probably not trying to change something that's not broken. I suppose, but I suppose I know Lee probably would have never had this experience. Let's say coming off the bench would have been always playing, but like them fellas that aren't starting, like McGeaney must be an unbelievable man manager because they can't be happy not starting. Like you train, you put in all this effort to start. And that's why you give them such a chance on Sunday. They must have some team morale for lads to be coming on with that impact, and just being so competitive at training. They're not throwing the toys out of the pram. They're coming on and doing their best for Armagh to make sure Armagh are winning every time. No more than the Galway lads, and it's no coincidence two of them are in the final. Like they look like they've just such a buy-in together as a team that it's not kind of coming on for a cameo to say, well, F you manager, I should be playing. It's coming on. I'm going to do the best thing for Armagh or Galway to make sure Armagh or Galway win the game, and that can be difficult for a sub. Especially if it's in a knockout game, and you could be knocked out. You want the manager nearly remembering you as someone that he should have played from the get-go. So for them players to be coming on and doing that, I think just shows the character of them players, and it's an unbelievable thing for a starting player as well. If you know they're coming on to do the best for you, whether they're coming on for you or coming on beside you, it gives you such a head start on the game nearly. It's really
even Johnny Heaney, he'd make 10% of the teams, like, because he's a brilliant footballer, and yet like I'd be saying with you with John Daly, I'm like, he must have done something terrible. I know, but they've obviously the system that works. But John Daly, Johnny Heaney, like two players that get into most inter-county squads, like blinking, and I just think that's again, like, you're on about man management. To get the best of those guys coming on, that speaks volume about McGeaney and PJ in terms of what their communication is like, and how they're pushing them to do that without, and you do, if like, you'd be telling a complete lie if you told me that those guys are happy to be impact guys, because they're elite sports guys, but they know what's best now at this stage, and they know what works. So I'm sure they've had hard conversations, but equally they probably know they're invaluable in terms of what they bring to their squads when they do come on and bring that confidence.
Yeah, and it's easier when you're winning too. You can't really go up to the management and say, well, you need to change this when you get the results. So it's an interesting one. Like you were saying there about like lads who, like, there'll be a lot of like matchups. One thing I find both teams are very good at actually is with their matchups, they really go after the matchups, but they don't lose their shape in their defensive system then, when they're back. Like they'll always have an eye on the player they should be marking, but they're always conscious of the other players having an impact. It's one thing that I'd say, like, how well the two of those teams are coached, because you can get 15 men behind the ball and teams can still find a way to open you up. Them teams are very organized, really good communication, leadership at the back to make sure that they're covering the space, but also they're tagging the men who were maybe the so-called danger men. So it'll be an interesting one.
And that's a question I actually have for you, German. Do you mind me asking? I noticed Barry McCambridge now. He didn't even start in Ulster, but he's done some job since he has come in. Didn't he mark you in the quarter? Was he tagged for you? What does he have that maybe is different? Because again, he wouldn't have been a guy that we would have touted very highly. Then in his last 2 games, he's been pretty awesome, to be fair. So what was your experience of him in the quarterfinal?
Yeah, so I actually looked back in the game, because obviously I saw he scored a bit, and I was kind of annoyed with myself. I was nearly blaming myself then. I was like, should I have been there on him? And when I was looking back in the scores, I come to him as a defender in a second, but just from an attacking point of view, and I was watching him against Kerry as well. It's like, I'm going to keep an eye on this fella now and see what he's doing. He just goes like the clappers when, so say I could be the far side, maybe looking for the ball, and he might have maybe for that attack taken another player, and next thing he'd be gone. He goes to the end line. It's like he was told every time an Armagh player gets a ball in the hand from a turnover, don't even look for getting the ball. You just go down to that end of the field, and then he ends up getting on the end of attacks. But he's very, very high engine. Like, he is up and down all the time. Now, there was times, say, where he might be gone. Like, the way the game works, like, I don't know, do many players even mark each other anymore? Like, it's all about, sometimes if it's real slow play, a man marker will try and will tag it. He was tagging me for the game every time, say it was a slow build up. He'd be real stuck to me, and he was the one that maybe wasn't too concerned about the defensive shape. He was more concerned about making sure I wasn't getting at the end of the shots. Which is an interesting one, because some teams will leave you a bit just to make sure that they're kind of like shifting across at the defense, whereas he was. Galway probably do that more than Armagh would. Galway might leave you on the sideline if you're out there kind of maybe wanting to come in on your good side. They might leave you to kind of make sure they're not conceding goals down the middle, and then when the ball switches across, they'll push back out to you. Then they'll go really tighten you. But no, he's physical. He's strong and fast. A smart player. Will always get contact on you as much as possible when you're trying to maybe come in the loop. But a good kind of reader of the game, maybe knowing when the attack was building up, or maybe when I was going to go. No, I was impressed with him as a defender. It was tight, physical, and he's fast. But yeah, no, good player. Joe, when you're going into games, you nearly kind of have you nearly know who might pick you up from previous games or league games stuff. Yeah. I didn't envisage him picking me up. I actually didn't know who did have their. But yeah, no, he's a good player.
It's funny you said that, because actually, if you look at the Armagh's last score against Kerry, in terms of hand hats over and literally last play, it's actually McCambridge who's left from for a hand in goal chance if Turbo gives it to him. It's just fascinating to know what he's like, because a guy that, again, we wouldn't have detailed a huge amount of kind of analysis on before, but I'll tell you one thing, he did a great job in the semi-final as well.
Yeah, and he's a smart defender.
Yeah,
like, yourself, like, he knows, like, say maybe I prefer my left foot, so he might stand that other side of me, or he might, like, he knows, say, when an attack is building up slowly, and like when certain players in our team was getting the ball, maybe that might be a trigger for me to go and get on it, because I know what they're going to do with the ball. I know they might go into the contact, turn around, and I'm coming quick. Whereas he knew all of that. Now, he mightn't have, but it seemed to me like he did. So he kind of knew kind of what was coming up, and he's physical now. He's a strong man. Didn't expect him to be as physical, not dirty now or pulling off the ball, but when the attack was building up, he'd certainly know that it's time to get very close. And no, he was good. He's a good player. And he's having he had a good semi-final as well.
Yeah, would you see him tracking a Shane Walsh type of player, or would he be I see? Yeah, Galway have different kind of players. Like a McDade nearly has to get special attention as well, because he's seen in that second half against Dublin. And 2 years ago, McDade got 4 points from midfield in the All-Ireland final. Like, he's one of these players that could just explode on Sunday and suddenly get 4 or 5 points out of nothing. So who would you see the likes of McCambridge, McKay, probably maybe Comer, possibly? Like, where kind of matchups Armagh-wise on Galway forwards?
It's a tricky one. I see actually Conor Mackin is in to start.
Yeah, from Ukraine. Yeah.
He's very athletic, so I don't know if he's going to pick up Walsh, maybe just follow Walsh around the place. Will Paddy Burns, Mark Comer, I think that could suit Comer because Burns will like that physical. I think with Comer you need to be really smart on him. So I think you need to know his strengths. So I think they're actually interesting matchups. I think that Galway team could change around a bit. Could positional changes. They could try and mix it up. It's an interesting one. It's a hard one to know what the matchups would be like. But I'd imagine McCambridge would probably pick Comer or Walsh, I'd say.
He picked Walsh in the group game.
Did he? I'd say he'll do the same.
And I think Johnny McGrath will go Turbot.
Yeah.
I think Johnny McGrath, he's definitely been one of the best man markers. It's funny, there is no man marker specialist really anymore because of defensive structures. But Johnny McGrath has marked every kind of out and out top forward, I think, from opposition when you for goal this year, and I don't expect that to change Sunday. Goalless half back line don't necessarily man mark. They're very comfortable with holding their kind of zones and playing whoever comes to cross that way. Now I do think poor Joyce will have some form plan for Campbell coming on. I think he's going to learn a lot from what he brings to the game in terms of because he's going to get the ball, so he'll have someone maybe detailed for that job. I do agree with the Kelly McDade factor. I think it's funny, McDade doesn't play league football and then he just gets better as the championship goes on. Probably a bit quieter in the semi, but like a guy very comfortable on the biggest occasion. So I think I'm not sure if Forker picks him up or because Forker's quite a bit loose, kind of go forward, kind of he's a quantity kind of half forward, half back. So he's going to be an interesting matchup for from an Armagh perspective. I think midfield as well is going to be interesting. So Rian O'Neill plays that kind of third midfielder role. You detail someone to man mark him because again he kicks 3 points in the semi-final. You can't give Rian O'Neill that type of time or space. So, and then I think McCreely will probably so in midfield you have Conroy who's having a brilliant season, but it's funny no one has actually marked Conroy this year.
No, he's having a great year.
He's having a brilliant year. I think someone like McCreely might go man to man with him, try and run him. Because I don't think to see Grimley as a man marker. I think he's too important to tackle the other way, and he contributes with 2 points a game. So I think Ben McCready will probably match up against Conroy, and then Maher, maybe Grimley. I don't know Maher. Sorry to interrupt you, Lee. I actually think one of the best man markers for Galway is actually John Maher. I think he'll pick up Rian O'Neill. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't pick Rian O'Neill. I just noticed when playing against Galway, he usually picks up Enda Smith when we play against Galway. Yeah.
And I've just watched him.
He did Fenton as well in Dublin.
Yeah, so I think who did he mark against? I can't remember who he marked against Mayo. Could have been.
Maher he actually played centre forward.
Just that out and out centre forward.
Yeah, more or less. It wasn't a man marking role as such. He was given the kind of the freedom to go up and down with his kind of aerobic ability. So, but definitely Fenton he had in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think he'll really try and get stuck into Rian O'Neill. I think that would be an interesting battle there. But I think they'll match up. That should be an interesting one because Maher is very mobile to get up and down the field, and he's strong and physical in the air as well. So, been interesting. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's been a revelation for them. Really, like come out of nowhere, and he's really brought them to a new level over the last couple of years. In fairness to him,
it's funny. I think Ocean County, who had probably a really quiet semi-final, probably poor by his standards. I think he might be detailed for someone like a Dylan McHugh at the weekend. Although they don't mark, I don't think all of halfbacks mark anyone, but I think someone like a County who did that job against Ryan McHugh in particular very well this year. I think he might try to do a job with Dylan McHugh, knowing he loves that cut across McHugh, and he brings guys into the play, or he actually keeps going himself and gets a score. So I think if you take McHugh out of it in some regards, that'll go a long way to help our band on the way.
Yeah, McHugh's highly intelligent footballer.
He's
really good. Really good footballer. I noticed last year when we played them in the Connacht semi-final, John, like say as a forward, when you're tracking back, he was always out on the sideline, and they had obviously worked on getting it out wide. They held the ball, I think, for nearly 2 minutes for every attack. And next thing they cut in from the sides, but it was always him cutting in. But like there's difference. There's players who cut in to lay off the ball, but he's cutting in to hurt you, and he does it really well. He can score or the other lads around them know that he's going to lay it off if it's the best option. So he's really, really important to Galway. So it's been interesting to see what Armagh do with him. Do they just kind of hope that maybe the defensive system deals with that? But it's very difficult because they've a good bit to worry about there without worrying about Dylan McHugh coming forward. So that's why Galway are a very difficult team to beat, and they have threats from all over the field. That's why again. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, it was just in the build-up to that Armagh game. What were the weaknesses that you were looking at in that week leading up to that game that you saw something that she could target in Armagh that Galway might be looking at this week?
Yeah, so first of all, the mindset was huge. Like, we knew we were on a high. We were loving this week on week, and then having 2 wins in a row and getting momentum. One thing was the mindset. We knew that they were going to be under pressure to beat Roscommon. As in, we knew that there'd be expectation for Armagh to reach the semi-final for first time in a while. So we knew that was going to be one thing, that if we could be in the game for as long as possible. The other side of it, we watched, we did a good bit of analysis on Galway and Armagh in that game in Sligo. And one thing we knew, and from a lot of Armagh's previous games, was that they do not depend, like, they're very good footballers now. They're really good footballers. So I don't want to be disrespectful towards them, but they do live a lot off, say, other teams' mistakes on that 45. And then if the weather is good, they'll probably leave fellas up and kick the ball. They've likes of Grug in there. He's a great left foot and really high football IQ as well. He can create something out of nothing. Or else if it's the wet conditions on Sunday, I'd imagine they'll just try and break a pace, and then you have your McCambridge bringing them up the field. So that means if 4 lads go up the field who maybe aren't their scorers, that's 4 Galway defenders gone back into the full back line. Then you have your Ian O'Neills coming late, getting the shots off. So we would have been confident enough of breaking them down, say, working on our attack play. Our attack play, we felt like maybe above a lot of things this year has been maybe quite strong, and breaking teams down, getting a bit of depth into our play, widths, kind of varying it up how we were playing, position wise, etc. So probably we didn't want to give them that energy on their own 45. That was one thing. And then obviously we didn't plan on missing 400 shots as well along with that. So we actually gave them a few turnovers. We dropped a few balls short and gave them a few turnovers on the 45 in the first half, and that killed us. That first half was probably where it all went wrong for us. It could have been easy, that first half, and where they missed a couple of goals. It could have been about 11 points to 3-2 at halftime that game. So it was disappointing how it worked out like that. But definitely not giving them the energy on their own 45 was a big thing. And then we always, I suppose, because it was a quarter-final and they were favourites, we knew that there would be a lot more pressure on them coming down the line. But then different things happened during the game, which maybe didn't help us in putting the game into that situation.
Yeah, Lee. I actually nearly like Armagh. They have glimpses of that Mayo team you played on there between the 2010-2020. I'm sure you never went out with the intention to play in chaos, but it felt like that Mayo team there was chaotic ends to games and that, and it seems to be Armagh do seem to get caught up in that. And the Kerry game, probably the last 15 minutes, is when they played their best football, when they had to go at it. And I suppose nothing more than the Ian O'Neill point at the end. He just says, "Give me the ball, I'm kicking this from 50 yards." He probably wouldn't do that after 10 minutes. So do they actually thrive in the chaos more so than the controlled, structured way they have?
They have till now, to be honest. And it's funny, I don't think Galway have been very controlled and structured in their attack, which the group game suggested, and even for 57 minutes, like they were 12-8 up or 13-8 up, it looked like Galway were in cruise control. And because they gave Armagh a little bit of impetus off a mistake, that's the chaos you're talking about. And then the game descended into a bit of a shootout, and before you know it, Armagh are level and getting chances. And that's the kind of stuff Pork will know. And he'll even review that last 15 minutes against Kerry when Armagh were given the opportunity to go at them. And the thing with Galway is they were so street smart. They'll learn so much looking at those couple of games where Armagh have brought the game into a bit of a chaotic mess. versus when you're really controlled and structured and you build. And that's where Armagh probably struggled a little bit. It's not like they haven't come up against it, they come up against it quite regularly, but in terms of what Galway do, they're so good at holding the ball. They make you chase shadows for long periods of time. And when you're chased like that in Go Park, as we've all known, it's a lonely place and your legs are sapping at you. And it's funny, I was kind of half tipping Donegal, or kind of was tipping Donegal to beat Galway based on their energy and what they bring. But Donegal are dead in their feet with 10 minutes to go, because Galway had them chasing shadows for such long periods of time. And that's a team that are very comfortable in how they play the game and how they want to play the game. And I don't expect them to change too much from that the weekend. And if they do that and continue that, then Armagh will struggle to bring the game into any sort of chaos or madness, because Galway they're just too smart. So they'll be so aware of not making a big mistake late on, or if there's a short one to go short late versus a long, I can tell you now it'll be going long. So I do agree there. I think Armagh do thrive off it, but Galway are very smart and adept at understanding that and the context of the game. So Galway will try and control that situation as best they can.
And it's funny, like, you'd probably look at that Galway team and say, if they got into a chaotic game too, it nearly suits them.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. They won't obviously want it like that, because their mass support, very similar to the Mayo support, when that momentum is swinging the way, it's loud and it becomes chaotic, and it does have an impact. Maybe it mightn't affect the opposition team, but it gives the team who has that, say, support and momentum more energy. So that'd be it's an interesting one with the Galway,
and that's why I'd love Armagh to shoot from distance early and slot over a couple. Like, you're on a bit, when Armagh chasing that 40-yard, they go for it. I think if Armagh do a bit of that in the first half the next day, and Galway, because Galway drop deep. So if you're going to score, you're going to score from 40, 45. If Armagh clip 2 or 3 of those, right, all of a sudden you've Galway pushing it that bit more now, because they're aware of the Reno O'Neill danger or Aidan Forker scoring from deep, and then that leaves a bit more gaps up top for the likes of Turbot and Murn and these guys. So I would love to see Armagh score a couple of early long distance points, just to see what Galway do, and do they change it up enough to leave the gaps in their defence. That for me would signal then Armagh's intent in that first half in particular, if they do that.
Yeah, I think a good start is important for Armagh. I think it's now, there's not an awful lot between the two teams anyways, but I just think a good start kind of gets their tails up. I think it'll kind of set the tone for them for the whole game. Then it's funny you say that, and then we're saying about Armagh better off being down and then you're wondering, are maybe Galway better off being behind coming into the last 10 minutes, because they're so controlled, and it kind of stops that chaos from happening with Armagh then. So it's a real interesting one. And no matter what we're saying here, it probably won't happen anyways, but it's an intriguing one.
I hope it's chaos.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, sure. We'd all be hoping that.
Yeah, because the two semi-finals, the last 10 to 15 minutes are completely different. I've just looked here, like Donegal's last score was in the 60th minute.
Yeah.
So Galway just completely snuffed them out altogether. They held possession. I think it was Liam Silk got the last point. The work just, whereas the Armagh game, the crowd was flat pretty much until that Shane Ryan mistake and the McCambridge goal. It was flat, and then we mentioned the word chaos, like the Armagh support, everything, like Kerry probably felt it, and I think that's probably what Galway are looking at. If there is a bit of an upturn, not to be cynical in that, but can a fella go down with an injury? Can they just slow it down, Gleeson go along, just to avoid that kind of thing? I'm sure that is one of the big things. They'll know an Armagh storm will be coming at some stage.
Galway do it anyway, so it's okay.
You just mentioned Liam Silk there, actually, another player we haven't mentioned. Very good footballer. I think he kicked 2 points the last day, one off the left and right. I don't like, people mightn't understand the skill required for that. For maybe a lad that isn't looking at the post a lot of the time, say in trainings or in matches. So, and he's actually another one that, say, in previous years he would have been a detailed man marker on a lot of men out the field as well. So it'd be interesting to see what's his role in that game. Does he go out and Reno O'Neill? You just wouldn't know, or would he just maybe stay? He could actually do a man marking role on Grugan, maybe. It'll be to stop him getting on that ball around the 45, because when they get the ball on the 45, Armagh, they try and get it to Grugan because he is that intricate pass that he look inside and it kind of gets them ticking. So some interesting duels there.
Just briefly, Sean Kelly, and we haven't the Galway team yet. He was on the bench, I think, for Donegal. He came off early against Dublin after about 15-20 minutes. He's had 4 weeks now to rest up and recover with that injury. Do you start him from the start, Lee? Or I think he's probably more of a better player to start with and maybe get a good 50 minutes than maybe coming off the bench. I don't know, would you agree with that?
I know I'd start him. Sean Kelly's in top 10 players in the country when he is on form, and I think if you bring him on and he goes off injured, what's really worse? So I'd start Sean Kelly the weekend, even if it's half it. He obviously wasn't against Donegal, which is a smart call, and Keegan Darcy did a good job in his replacement. But for me, Sean Kelly starts every time. Too much. He's irrespective of they haven't relied on him. I still think he's their leader. They're the guy they look at. And even in the kind of final, the game had really passed him by. And in the last 5 minutes, he came up with some of the big plays at that trumped that game. He had a massive turnover late on in Maturan to get score a free late on. So, yeah, I'd be starting Sean Kelly. He's too good not to start. And I can be sure as hell, that decision has been made or wasn't made. I'd say Sean Kelly was telling poor choice, I am starting that Ireland final.
Yeah. It was made Sunday night, yeah. I was just going to say. But yeah, I think he's very important to start. Again, he's just one of those players. If he's your teammate and you see him lining out beside you, it just gives you that extra confidence.
Yeah.
And also, I think the factor as well, we're talking about how important the two benches are. If Kelly doesn't start, comes on and has to come off again, that's 2 subs gone and wasted. So you're probably better off starting him. And then if you can't see it out, just take him off, and then it's only 1 sub. What is his injury? Is it his ankle?
I heard hamstring, but I actually don't know exactly what it is.
It was ankle last year, and the word is hamstring this year. So
yeah, it depends on the injury. I don't know if you've ever had a hamstring injury, Lee, but I've had a few of them in my time.
I tore it this year.
If you have torn that, so he come on, he didn't go. He was fine against Donegal, so I think that's probably maybe 4 weeks. He's probably been maybe 3-4 weeks back from the injury, so he should be fine to start. But it's one of those, in the last 2 weeks, he could have twinged that again. And if you twinge that within 2 weeks of playing a game, I don't think you can play. But personally, myself, from twinging it, it's just going to get worse and it's going to tear eventually. I was reading the thing there, listening about the Shane O'Donnell and Patrick Horgan playing with hamstring injuries. Yeah. You're literally at 40% there, 30% if you have a hamstring injury. It's not one of those, you can't sprint or it's gone. And usually if you twinge it, it's too sore to even sprint. So it's a very interesting one, but I think Kelly should be fine.
I got the sniper.
It's not a nice one.
3C.
Really? It's do you know what? It's worse then when you see someone else doing it. You nearly kind of feel your own legs after you when you're playing a match or training. You see a fella doing it, you're like,
I don't think I straightened my leg as quick in my life. I was like, get me off.
It's a frightening one. And then some physios will tell you, it's only spasm. I'm like, it's like someone's after sticking a knife into the back of my leg. That's not what a spasm is like.
My leg was black for 10 days. So
yeah, it's meant to be a good sign, I think, isn't it? When it bruises up, I think it's a sign. It's good.
Damage.
Yeah. So, but it is just one of those from, say, Sean Kelly's point of view. He got through that Donegal game in 2 big weeks of training. Yeah. You start him all day. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hope he does make it because you want the best players on the big game. Just the last couple. It's early, but we have 1 game left. Footballer of the Year contenders going into this final. I think probably 5 or 6 contenders, but I'll let you, in my head anyways, but I'll let you maybe throw a few names out. Lee, might start with yourself. Who coming into this final is in the mix?
Dylan McHugh is definitely front runner at the moment for me, and just based on the season overall, just think he's been brilliant. 6 points in the championship, but just everything he's done has been brilliant in terms of what Galway have been good at. He's been involved and centre that. I think Johnny Maher as well. I think you're not to mention Johnny Maher. I think he's been inspiration as well. And then probably another from. I think if Killy McDade is a big one at the weekend, we'll be discussing him again. I'll be honest. For Armagh, probably Barry McCain, which has definitely been in the talk point for his big 2 performances last 2 games. I think Reno O'Neill, again, if he's a big day, we'll be talking about him. Probably, I'd say that. Turbot, yeah.
Probably Turbot, yeah.
Turbot, yeah.
Even probably the Paul Conroy as well. I think if he had a big final, I think, because I think he's had a good year. And in kind of all those games where maybe people haven't been passing much heat on, he's been kicking 3 or 4 points from midfield. I think it's not an easy task, and in a lot of games, like teams might have a player tagging him too. So I think he's had a really good year for Galway. But Dylan McHugh.
It's funny, you name all those players, and none of them might have a big day on Sunday. It could be,
I know,
it could be the one guy that you don't discuss who could just tear the script up. Like that's the beauty of it. Like.
Yeah, but could it be Shane? I mean, Shane Walsh. We haven't really discussed the whole pile. Like that final performance 2 years ago, he put in. I thought he was excellent in that Dublin game. Actually, the quarter final, he wasn't fully fit, but he kicked some monster points in that first half just to keep Galway in touch. If he can get maybe even to those heights and a bit more, like if Shane Walsh had a sensational performance, would that be a bit hard giving him Footballer of the Year based off maybe a couple of games? But you just don't know.
I think it is. But maybe you're different. I think it is, like he'd be in the discussion for it, but I don't think over the full year he's probably produced enough. He's done it in absolute glimpses. I think that Dublin first half was as good as we've seen Shane Welsh. I expect a big day in Sunday from him, I really do. And if he has one of those days, I think he'll be in the conversation. But it's very hard to discuss him in that list of players who've been consistently brilliant for each team up to now.
Yeah. I think if personally, I think if Reno O'Neill was in with a shout, I think Shane Walsh would be, because he's himself, like obviously Reno O'Neill is a fantastic player and probably had very good games, but just you expect maybe the top maybe 9 out of 10 every game, but he's probably been 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 every game. But I think if he was considered, I think Shane Walsh would be have to be, especially if he had a big game on Sunday. I'm not sure how it's picked, but I would presume it's probably maybe consistency over the year, and that's why I'd have Dylan McHugh as a front runner. I think he's been very, very solid, clipping in with a few scores, defensively sound, assist and scores. I think he's probably been the standout one for me. But as I said, Sunday will probably decide a lot.
It does. Find the sides after that in terms of that front runner for Football Year, and even say if guys are on the cusp of all stars or not, that'll bring them in or put them out as well based on Sunday. That's just the nature of the finals. So it is.
Yeah,
it was actually Davy Burke, I think, was listening yesterday. He said, I mean, if Soupy Campbell comes off the bench and gets another 2 or 3, even though he's not been starting, could he get an all-star by right? He's making a huge impact and playing well.
Well, Shadara is the second highest score for play, so there's absolutely no reason why. Yeah, but there's no reason why he couldn't. And actually, for James O'Donoghue said the same thing during the week. He goes, if you're picking a guy at the moment on form, just because he's not starting, but he's producing the displays he's displaying in each of the half he is, there's no reason why you wouldn't have him in discussion for an all-star. Do you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, he's been fantastic. Yeah, he's been very good.
So final predictions. I think, judging by the last hour, I think I know where the 2 Connacht men are going. They're going to go with the neighbours, I think. But Lee, go on. We'll start with yourself. Reasoning behind your decision.
I do think the 2 teams, like, this is as good as an opportunity any team's ever had before in the last decade. I think each team will fully believe it. Like, it is, like, when you really sit down and review the game, it is really 50-50. I just feel it's Galway's time. Based on the 2 years ago, based on the way they're playing, the confidence they're playing at, the structure, and the way they can eke out results. Like, it's funny, you look at even that Sligo game, they're losing up to injury time, they get a late goal. So they've been doing it all year, and I just think then the stretch when the game is in the net spot, I just feel Galway by 2 points.
Yeah, I'm really the same as that, and it's not that Armagh aren't good enough to win it. Armagh could easily win this final, but if I was a betting man, I'd have to be back in Galway to win. I just think their experience, their players, I just think they're very smart footballers, and then obviously the experience of 2 years ago. Like, I don't know what it's like. I presume like lads have to get suits sorted, hotels sorted, whatever happens after the game. I presume that's a lot that goes along with it. I just think that bit of experience with Galway will maybe have a small, well, probably only have a small impact for them, but I just think footballing wise, how good they are defensively and how good they are going forward, whether that's slow, fast, I think they just have the edge in this one. So I'd actually go for Galway by 2 as well. Yeah,
we'll be at the races next Monday.
God help the people going to Galway and Galway and the All Ireland and the racing on. I think
we'll have our maroon suits on. I know, but
lads,
it should be
thanks
tight.
Very much. Yeah. After the hurling last week, look, we can't rule out a draw, especially with these two. We've had 2 draws and a point. I think Armagh won by a point last year's the last 3 games. So I mean, look, you could be looking at another extra time marathon here. But lads, appreciate your time and hopefully we get a good game.
Thanks, Dara.
Thanks.